come in with your famous tagline?
I know. Welcome back, y'all.
It's become a real highlight for me.
Because it's so off brand.
It's so off brand. Like I literally like start smiling before we start the episode because if I'm like, is it gonna happen? We're gonna get to
I know. It's like I gotta say it. It's no thing. So welcome back, y'all, to Impact Minded. Let's hop in. I have such a great question. I'm so excited about my question. This is the best question yet. Okay, if anyone had you on speed dial, who's the person that, like, if you could choose anyone to have your number on speed dial, who would you choose?
Man, that is a good question.
That's a good question, right? I was like, ooh, yeah. I like this one. I don't know where I came up with it, but it's so good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, wow. Okay. Who has me on speed dial?
Who has you on speed dial? Yeah, because today we're going to be talking about we're talking about your network is your net worth. And so I guess we'll set it up a little bit just so everyone can kind of have this in their minds, this focus. But like my biggest thing is it's your network is so important. But it's not really just who you know that's important. It's who knows you is even more important. Like, if you know a lot of people, that's important. But I want you to think about who knows you. Like, who has you on speed dial that's like, ooh, you got to know my boy Taylor. Like, Taylor will change your life. So who has, like, if you could choose anyone in the world, anyone, you don't have to know him right now, but if you could choose anyone to have you on speed dial, that's like, you got to know my boy Taylor. Like, he'll change your life. He'll whatever. Who would you choose to have you on speed dial?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I don't know. My mind's like bouncing around. I mean, my mind goes to, I don't know that this is really my answer, but I'm just going to go through this in like real time, or think through this in real time. I mean, I love the idea of, like, you and I talk about this a lot, is like being around people that are doing things that make what you're doing feel small. Right. Like, I think you said it, is like, I want to be around people that make my problems seem small, and say that to mean that people that are making moves that expand your horizons, where you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that, or man, they're moving through the world in a way that I wasn't thinking about. And so, it's like, certainly like some people that come to mind are like, the talking heads on the internet, but I think big business owners and like leaders, the Alex Hermosis and the people of the world, like, I certainly like the idea of being in a room, or being a value add to people at that level, whether it's someone like whether it's him or people like him, where like I'm bringing enough value to help solve their problems. And I also think about it from like a health and wellness perspective, like I'm thinking like big movers in the health and wellness industry. Like, there's companies that are really kind of leading the charge. It's like, Whoop and Aura Ring, and some of these folks that are thinking about, some of these companies that are thinking about things really dynamically. And so, like, being, on speed dial for like their founders. Like, I'm drawing a blank on the founders' names of those two companies. I know them, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. Yeah, but I think that would be mine. That's not like a super specific example, but that's where Ryan goes, "What's yours?" That's a hard question. It's like good because it's hard. Like, if you're like, anybody, I want to think about that more. But what's yours? Who comes to mind?
You're gonna hate my answer.
I know. Who's it gonna be?
Elon Musk. It's easy
God
for
damn
me.
it. I
It would
knew.
be Elon Musk. I'm like,
Uh,
I want my number on his phone, speed dial. Like, do you know the impact that I can make specifically right now with some of those decisions? Like that I would
know.
love to guide leadership at that level. Like that would be and connect people to like true impact and like thinking 100 years out and thinking through some of those things. So whether you're a fan of him or you're not, like he's making a big impact. He is all over the place right now, and like for better or for worse, I'm not going to take a stance on that because I have very conflicting opinions on all the things. But he's making a big impact, and like who's guiding those decisions and thinking 100 years out, thinking about all of the layers of people and the ripple. And so I would love for Elon Musk to have me on speed dial. So if you know him, introduce us, please. It's my dream. Yeah. Now I think it's important to think about who knows you, right? Like we talked a couple weeks ago, or maybe even last week, about the ripple of influence. And so when we think about growth and we think about growing our company, we think about our goals, the number one thing that I think we miss as leaders is thinking about our network. We kind of take it for granted. And honestly, we spend, I would say, I should have looked up the stats, but I would say at least, this is like such a rough statistic, at least 50% of leaders and business owners would put money into the internet and SEO and all of the different options before they'd put time, which AKA is part of your net worth, into building your relationships. And I think that is a massive miss on our part. And it's something that I think we have to talk more about, because it is how I built my entire first company, 2 companies. I had 0 marketing budget, and the relationships that I built then are still serving me over a decade later. And so your network should be your number one builder for your worth and for your business and for your team and all of the in between. So let's hop in. Like I am such a fan of this conversation because my people, the relationships in my life are like the main thing, the most important thing to me. And that's of course family, but I think that's greater. Like, going back to our question, who knows you? Like who truly knows you and would say, you need to know this person, because those are the people that we should be building into, right? Like those relationships that we really value, and we want those people to know us and we want to know them. That strategic partnership is invaluable. It's priceless because it just keeps giving. So, Taylor, what are your thoughts on this? Let's hop in here.
Yeah, I always, the place that I go immediately when conversations like this topic comes up is just my own experience with like trying to do it both ways, trying to do it alone, or trying to really move the needle without a strong network, and then leaning in, and the results speak for themselves, and I think to your point, we invest in so many places in our organizations and our businesses, and whether that's marketing or SEO and all these things, and those are important, but the primary mover is our network. It's who knows you. And so I think I'll speak from my own experience. Like I know that I let myself get derailed from this fact. During COVID was part of that. There was like physical separation, also just really focusing on building like internet-based businesses that are like highly scalable. There was several different inputs, but what I found myself doing was like really drifting further away from leaning into a strong network. And I I've really now come back to and recommitted and re-recognized the true importance of always fostering that, and part of that is being in front of people. Part of that is being the first person to make introductions and to help other people out. I think that's the other piece of when we're talking about this, I know that people are going to think about networking, and networking is important, right? Reaching other people. But a quote that we found when we were preparing for this episode was a quote by Seth Godin. If no one has read his stuff, he's great. He's a marketer and like UX UI expert. He has a lot of great books out there. But his quote is that networking that matters is helping other people achieve their goals.
Ooh,
and so I think it's a value-based proposition, and that's a big shift for me. Like I really want to be, and it's like to your question that kick things off. Like I want to be the person that other people call, not because of my value, but because of like what I can do for them. Like, what introductions can I make? How can I help them solve problems? Do I know somebody? Like there is like that depth and breadth of a network. And I think if you continue to build your network from how much value you can put into that network, that's what moves the needle, right? Like that's what, and it impacts hiring. It impacts your, growth potential. It impacts revenue. There's so many areas. And I think that that's really the opportunity here, is to think more dynamically about our network, right? Like I think it tends to be a pretty linear, like I'm going to go to this networking event and I'm going to hand out business cards, and like maybe, okay, that, fine. But I think the mindset shift here and the real opportunity is to think about what your network looks like and how, and you build that network from a value-based position. That's really when it starts to expand, right? Like if you just go to networking events, or you go to network, or you're building your network because you want to get something out of it, that's going to be a real challenge. I think that's where you're going to get stopped. If you go into these experiences and these opportunities from like, what can I provide? Then I think that's when you're going to see a big win.
And we're to that point, like we're talking about building true relationships. And for a long time, I was actually a director for a really large networking group, and I won't shoot out names. They're actually amazing. But it was super apparent when some hard stuff came up in the group that like those relationships, we were just showing up in a transactional way. And so building a network is not actually just networking, but it's understanding who you need in your corner and whose corner you want to be in, and then taking the true time and the discomfort of building a real relationship. And that really does start with, I think that starts with time investment. It starts with vulnerability. And the reality was, in the course of being a director for those groups for just a few years, I watched multiple businesses close. We sadly enough saw numerous people take their lives by suicide. And no one knew in those groups. We were with each other every single week. Once a week we met. It was mandatory. You could like miss like 3 times a year. And we were shoulder to shoulder with all of those people who closed their businesses and took their lives, and nobody was talking about it. And there was solutions sitting in that room, right? Like there was, in one of the groups, there was 102 people in a group that, and those people could have picked up the phone and said, I am going to have to close my business if I don't see something change. I am in a really bad place. I need help. I need connection. I feel alone. I feel like I can't do this anymore. None of those people felt comfortable enough or had the relationships actually built at that level, at that depth, to actually be useful within what they needed. And so whether you're in a place where you're like, I'm actually struggling, or you're in a place where like, I just need to grow, or you're in a place where you're like, I just want to give back because I'm not alone and I have a great network and I just want to give back. Building your network from an intentional place of building those relationships and truly showing up and truly taking the time to be known and to get to know someone is invaluable. It will literally not just change your life. It won't just change your employees' lives, but it'll change like the whole entire organization, and it will change their life, right? Like the ripple is continuous when we look at relationship. And it's crazy. We pulled up some stats. It says that 70% of employee engagement is driven by leadership and connection. And that starts within the leader's network. So if the leader is able to build a powerful network behind them, their likelihood of being connected and engaging their employees and their staff and their team is 70% higher. And then the other one is companies with strong networks innovate more and create more valuable ideas. And there was a whole study done on that with Harvard Business School. And it again, it's just invaluable. Like you can't actually put a price tag because that's where I get stopped. That's where I let my need for building relationships and networking and building that network. I'm like, I don't have time for it. I'm just going to throw money online. I don't have time for it. I don't want to go do the coffee. I'll just hop on Zoom. And the reality is I've just quit doing that. I've actually chose, even though it's snowing here in Denver, I've chose to go on walks with people versus just go grab coffee or hop on Zoom because it actually builds relationship. And my goal is to move more. So how can we actually partner with people and choose to build relationship and achieve our goals together by breaking down the typical barriers of networking and actually building true relationship, which is know, like, and trust. We've all heard it. If you want to build your network, you have to know, like, and trust people. If you want to grow, you have to know, like, and trust people. And that takes vulnerability and actually allowing people to know you. So this conversation honestly has changed my life numerous times. And yet it's the first thing to go when I get busy. And that makes me super sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an interesting relationship between building your network and continuing to foster relationships in that network. And when we are in high growth mode and high growth time periods, there's an inverse relationship usually, right? We double down. And we're okay, I'm going to work harder. And by working harder, that's going to produce the results that I want. But we know that you're not struggling, or it's not because you're not working hard enough. It's because you're not meeting enough of the right people, or the right people don't know who you are. There's actually a connection there. But again, when we get busy and things are happening and we're trying to really push, to your point, those are the first things that go, right? Or that is the first thing that falls by the wayside. It's oh, I don't have time. I did the same thing again, for a while. I was oh, I'm good. And, I can do this without traveling, or I can do this without. And the fact of the matter is I just don't think that's the case. I really have changed my outlook on that because I recognize that just doubling down and trying to push things forward without building relationships with people, it's just a silo that it just doesn't yield the same results, and not that you can't, that you shouldn't have resources allocated for those areas. By all means, you have to have, an online presence and social media and marketing and all these things. But again, I think the inverse relationship is something to recognize. And we see this happen all the time. It happens in ourselves. It happens with clients we work with. Is things get busy and they become insulated. They pull back. And it really, what we're advocating for is it's really the opposite. You need to double down on your network. And again, this it goes into so many different areas, and it's such interesting, that statistic is employee engagement is led by the network of the leaders. Mm-hmm. And I think this is another piece, and that as our team builds, or as our team grows, what I have seen is that leaders will often kick that over to their teams and be like, well, now that I have a team, that's not a me thing anymore, right? My team is out there, like whatever the example is. And I think it's the opposite. Again, I want to make it clear that I think that the relationship between our growth and how much we pour into those relationships and continue to build those relationships in our network is probably the highest and best use of our time. I was listening to this podcast, and I forget the exact company, but it was the CEO of a very large organization. I'm going to say Fortune 5 or Fortune 100 company. And so tens of thousands of people in this organization that are on his team, right? There's lots of people out there advocating for that company. And he was asked, like, how many, what's your year look like? And he said, I'm going to something like 67 events in person. And then they asked, oh, are they coming to you? He said, no, I'm going to them. So this person who has all these people and has all this network and all these resources and all this stuff, like in his case, he's on a plane more than once a week to go build a network, continue to build a network. He was the CEO of this company because that was what he saw as the highest and best use of his time, was to still continue to be the primary advocate for that company and the primary touch point when people think about how they connect with that company. It was him. And he was the first person that was going to be in line when people think about like this company or a resource, or he was still the person, despite the tens of thousands of people that are, under him. And I thought that was really interesting. That has continued to stick with me, because I think that there's a real lesson there again. And like, of all the things that these individuals could be doing, FaceTime is it. And I'm not like to my example, these aren't like paid speaking engagements. It's not, this guy's like going to events for free to meet people, right? Like, so it's not like super sexy, like he's bouncing around at like keynote speaking engagements. I'm sure there's some of that, but most of this is just like, he's just in the right rooms, right? Or trying to position himself in the right rooms. And so I think that's one of the things I want people to walk away with today as well, is I think that as you continue to build and scale and grow your team and you have more people involved, it is easy to let the responsibility of that outweigh our need to continue to be a primary touch point and continue to build a really, really strong and valuable network so that our organization and those people that are involved in that organization can be supported as well. So
I think to that point too, like, I want to break down a little bit just like the right rooms, and there's so much I could say here, but I think the other thing with building a network is we go out and we meet all these people and we try to do business with people we don't like and trust. There's a reason why that middle one is in there. And I think we forget about that. That was another one of my sticking points. I'm like, this person's doing shit work in this group and no one has enough care for this individual to tell them and like to address these challenges. And I think that is a core piece of how we build our network. Like, if you're trying to build a network and you're like, oh, there's no good people, I'm like, well, then build them, then grow them. Like, typically what I have found in a network, when I'm like, man, I really like love all the components, I love this guy's business, but like, there's just something missing. Like, even our cleaning company, like, I have come beside them and I love them and they do great work, but there's been some sticking points as I was their first client, and there's been some like real sticking points, and I was just honest and they like fixed it immediately. Like, they are such integrous people. They are so incredible. Like, great relationships doesn't mean that it's seamless and there's no challenges. Actually, some of the greatest relationships you can build are the ones that actually start out rocky or hit a rocky point, and you can work through it. And actually both parties, if you do it right, will be better because of it. But if you're out there and you're trying to build a network and you're like, I don't like this person, but they can bring me business, you're probably going to build a lot of information that networking doesn't work, and building a network isn't possible, and having good people. Like if you have the like motto that people suck, and Taylor and I are guilty of saying that, I'll be honest. Something that comes out of our mouths actually kind of often when we're like in process mode. But like if you're walking around and you're going to allow that mantra to like penetrate your life and you're going to live by that, you're probably not going to build a powerful network. But it's because you're not actually following that path of like know, like, and trust. You actually have to know someone, get to know them enough, not one coffee. It's probably at least 3. Like you wouldn't ask someone to marry you after one coffee. So like in networking, you also cannot just decide that you're going to be in partnership after one coffee or after one group or whatever the case is. Like you're probably going to have to date them for a little while, and you're probably going to have to like work out some things and be like, hey, like, do you want kids? Do you not want kids? Like, what does your life look like? It's the same in business networking. And so I really want to lean on that. Like how you do it is you have to get to know someone. You have to decide that you actually like them and you want to do business and you want to do relationship with them. And then you have to build that trust. Like, oh, when something comes up, they're going to actually address it. They're not going to run from the problem. I can tell them that service sucked and they're going to go fix it. They're going to take care of my clients. They answer their phone. There's all of these pieces, and that could be different for each person, but you have to find someone who's not like-minded, but you have to find people who are like valued so that you can work through the shit together. And I think that's a core piece. Like if you don't know how to do that with your network, guess what? You're not going to do it with your team. And so the network and that process and building your people is actually going to help you to also build the skills and just change the way you're doing things within your client relationships and your team relationships. And so it's about the people you meet. It's also about the muscle you build as you're developing these partnerships. And again, it's what will grow your business because of those intrinsic pieces and parts that you're going to be forced to do as you go and try to find people you like and trust. So I think this is such an important conversation. And if you're not doing it, we are excited to help you. So I will get off my soapbox because I'm obviously very passionate about this.
Do it. Rock and roll. Yeah, I mean, to that end, it's something that we believe in, and that's something we've doubled down on this year and made a commitment to really create that space. And you said it earlier, if it doesn't exist, then create it. Don't be mad for the results that you don't get for the effort that you didn't put in. And that's a real commitment for us this year. So if you were listening to this and you are in the Denver, Colorado area, we are launching a couple of different networking groups. The first one is going to be on the 4th Thursday of every month. And as of this episode, that is going to be on the 27th of February. That is going to be at Tradecraft Industries. It's from 3 to 4:30 in the afternoon. And that's going to be for service-based industries. So real estate groups, construction, trade industries, restaurant, entertainment. If you are in a service-based industry, we are hosting a free networking event at Tradecraft. Again, that's the 4th Thursday of every month, and that is to give back. Those are industries that Christine and I have both spent time in. It is industries that our families, had businesses in. We grew up in. We feel a commitment to those industries, and it's also they're also industries with massive potential. There is a tremendous wealth exchange going on as companies in that space get sold and bought and scaled by younger generations, and we want to provide a place where those industries and the owners and teams of those industries are supported. So if you're in Denver, join us for that. We'll put information in the show notes. We are also starting another networking group. It is going to be the day before that. It's going to be the 26th. So it's the 4th Wednesday of every month. And that's for health and wellness entrepreneurs. So if you are an entrepreneur in the health and wellness space, a dietitian, nutritionist, coach, gym owner, physical trainer, anything in that space, we are also passionate about that industry, and we want to help entrepreneurs and business owners in that space also get the support that they deserve, and to have a real network of like-minded business owners. That is not something that exists. And so we're going to build it, and we're going to start in Denver. So that is going to be, again, Wednesday, February the 26th. That's going to be from 12 to 1:30 at Improper City in Denver. And we're excited. We're building partnerships with lots of folks for that group, or for both of those groups. So tons of value. Again, we just want to build a support network and the mechanisms so these people in these spaces can thrive. So we'll put information for all of that in the show notes. If you're in Denver and any of that resonates, you're related to or even tangentially connected to any of those spaces, we would love to have you for that free event and just be there for support and actually help you build that network so that your network can be your net worth. And until then, we look forward to seeing you in person or back on this podcast for Impact Minded. And thanks as always. We'll see you next time.
Bye, y'all.